I'm Helen, and I do a lot of the customer service for Miss Babs. One of the things that often comes up when I'm talking with knitters is knots, because as much as we would love to have endless strands of yarn, it just isn't possible. At Miss Babs, we have a 1 knot per skein policy, and if you ever have a skein with multiple knots that you bought at full price, please contact us right away so that we can fix it before you knit with it. It's always a good idea to know if your skein has a knot before you start knitting, and this is one reason it's always fun to wind your own yarn. If you do come across a knot, the first thing to do is to see if it can be undone. I know that when I'm winding and not paying as much attention as I should, I'll often get slip knots, and those will pull right out. But sometimes you'll have a knot where the skein is joined, and those do have to be dealt with a different way. You'll want to snip them and then rejoin the yarn somehow, without having a knot in your knitting, preferably. We're going to show you several different ways to join your yarns, including Russian join, spit splicing, overlapping the ends, weaving in ends after knitting, catching floats, and Veronica's crazy catching floats method. The first technique we're going to look at is the Russian join. So for the Russian join, it works best with finer yarns because you will have a doubled end to knit with. It works really nicely with lace weight or fingering weight, and I've also been using it recently in brioche because it joins the ends and I don't have to deal with it afterwards. Russian joins work particularly well for non-spliceable yarns. Most animal fibers can be spliced unless they're superwash treated, but for man-made fibers or plant fibers, you can use the Russian join. Some wool silk yarns can be spliced, but you would want to try that first on a scrap to make sure it works. Otherwise, the Russian join might be a good candidate. To do the Russian join, you'll want to thread a pointy, sharp darning needle with the end of the first yarn, and then you're going to weave it back in on itself. It's important to pierce the yarn and not just go between the plies, because this is what's securing the join and holding it strong and firm as you put more pressure on it in the knitting and the wearing of your project. So I'm just trying to get it through enough that it's going to be strong. I'm a little neurotic about my yarns and my splices, so I tend to weave an inch or two. You can choose how far back to weave as you prefer, but I would recommend at least an inch. Once you've woven it enough to make it secure, you'll want to pull the needle through. You need to leave a loop in the old yarn so that you can thread the new yarn through it. So you'll thread the needle with the new strand of yarn, maybe, there we go, and put it through the loop that you left on the old yarn. This is the actual join. Then you're going to go back and do the same thing, weaving the point of the needle through the yarn, being sure to pierce and not just go between the plies. And then when you've woven enough, pull the needle through. And this time you can pull it tight. And then you'll want to go back and tighten the first one to get rid of that loop and pull it out. So now you can see it's a nice sturdy join. You can either trim the ends now, or you can go back and trim them after you've blocked the project, which allows them to wiggle and breathe a bit before you trim them and makes it less likely that they'll show out later. And now you just continue knitting as if you had a continuous strand of yarn. So as you can see, the stitches that have been knit with the yarn that was joined are a bit thicker right here than the others. But with lace knitting or with finer yarns, it's less noticeable and it does make for a nice sturdy join.